Hey everybody, it's JJ, Ramblings About Comics and Stuff, back with another edition of I Will Tell You. And today, I will tell you all about the very first appearance of the all new, all different, uncanny new X-Men from Marvel. So what's so new about the X-Men, you ask? They've been around for 50 years. Exactly. The X-Men have been around, as we know them now, for half a century, having first appeared 50 years ago, back in 1975. So, what I'm going to talk about today is the actual first appearance of the new X-Men, and it might not be the issue that you think it is. So, to examine that, first we need to look at the old X-Men, the original, the not so new X-Men, when they were first launched, which was back in 1963 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The X-Men were Marvel's newest team book, and it ran new original stories for several years. But what Marvel found was that the X-Men, unlike their other team, super team titles, just did not catch on the way, say, the Avengers did with its all-star roster, or Fantastic Four from Stan and Jack with its cosmic, epic awesomeness. X-Men just didn't click with as many readers. So sales of the book never really kept pace with a lot of Marvel's other titles. And then the day came in 1969, I believe, where Stan Lee said, that's it. We're going to switch the title to an all reprint format rather than cancel it outright. So starting in issue number 67, I believe, the title went to an all reprint format, just reprinting old issues of the X-Men for readers who may not have seen them back in the day, or maybe wanted to read them again for whatever reason. So issue 67, the X-Men went all reprint, and that was the way of it for several more years until the X-Men number 94 was the first issue of all new material in that time. And the team was indeed a lot more colorful, a lot more dynamic. It featured new characters like Colossus and Nightcrawler, Storm, Banshee, and some guy named Wolverine, who's proven to be pretty popular in his own right over the past several decades. So the book, when it switched back to a new format, that issue, that first issue, number 94, that was by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum. And when fans caught on to it, that there was a new X-Men team, they would start scouring comic shops and back issue bins trying to find the older issues, the previous issues. So what a lot of fans didn't realize at that point was that X-Men number 94 was not the first appearance of the team, as we all know now. That distinction actually belonged to the preceding giant-size X-Men number 1. That one was by Len Wein, along with Dave Cockrum. And that was the issue that actually introduced all of these new characters, except, of course, for Wolverine, who had already been introduced back in the pages of The Incredible Hulk several months earlier. So fans discovered that, yeah, there was another issue they had to track down. Now, back when the issue came out, all right, Giant Size X-Men number 1, you have to keep in mind kind of the economic status of the day, right? This was the mid-1970s, and what was the kind of social issue of the day. It was inflation, right? Coffee was expensive, gasoline was expensive, everything was getting more expensive. And Giant Size X-Men, as Giant Size would indicate, was a larger comic, meaning more expensive. And back in 1975, there weren't a lot of potential readers who were going to spend the ungodly sum of 50 cents for a comic book that features a whole new bunch of characters that nobody recognizes. So even those who were aware of the book may have passed it by, and seeing in that at that point that was the only uh, um, issue of Giant Size that had new content. It was kind of forgotten. So at that point, readers realized that okay, Giant Size X-Men #1 is the true first appearance of the all new, all different, uncanny new X-Men. Right? Right? Well, maybe. So so in 1975, when Marvel was pushing this new super team, um, Marvel also had what was ongoing at the time was their Marvel fan club. It was called Friends of Old Marvel. The acronym for that is FOOM. So it was called FOOM, and that was Marvel's fan club of the day that did run for several years in the early to mid 70s. And one issue in particular of FOOM, issue number 10, had a spotlight feature on the new X-Men. In fact, the cover was a beautiful two-color cover by Dave Cockrum that featured the new team, and the inside was kind of a spotlight on the X-Men, and they had a number of articles and whatnot showcasing the new team and explaining to readers who they were. Because after all, you have to keep in mind that once the original title went to an all reprint format, the team had become all but forgotten, and that seems really hard to believe nowadays. But back in the late '60s, early '70s, the X-Men were not featured in any major Marvel storylines in the comics. They were barely even mentioned. So it kind of was in order for Marvel to kind of reintroduce the team. And one great venue to do that was their fan club magazine. So Foom number 10 gave readers a peek at the new team that they might have missed on the newsstands. So was Foom number 10 actually the first appearance of the team? The issue did come out in 1975, right around the time the new team was introduced in the comics. So in order to determine what came first, uh, one has to understand the nature of cover dating comics and kind of common practice that publishers have long used on establishing what those cover dates should be, right? So, so back in the day, it's still common practice now, but back in the day, publishers, not just Marvel, not just comic book publishers, they would post date the cover date on their comics. So, in other words, the month that appears on the cover of a comic book was actually not the month it went on sale. It was actually dated some number of months subsequent to that, and how many months that was, would vary. But it pretty much when anyone would go to a newsstand to buy a new magazine or a comic book, they would tend to look for what they perceived as the latest issue, the freshest product on the newsstand. And the practice of post dating comics and magazines was born from that. So so how far did Marvel post date their comics back in 1975? So it's not too hard to determine that. If we take if we just pick any given cover date, for example, let's take March. All right, March of 1975. If you look at any Marvel comic with that cover date of March and you peruse the contents, and I don't mean the storylines, I mean the advertising and the non-creative content in the book, specifically Marvel's bullpen bulletin page, which would run in every issue, and every comic cover dated in a specific month would feature the same Marvel bullpen bulletin page. So if you look at Marvel's bullpen bulletin page for comics cover dated March of 1975, what you'll see in that page are references to Christmas and the holiday season from the previous December of 1974. So obviously, Marvel would not be referencing Christmas in a comic that came out in March, right? So the referencing of a December holiday in a March dated comic would indicate that Marvel at that time was post dating their comics by 3 months. And as a fan and collector who got into the hobby a couple years after that, I can attest to that Marvel did in fact post date their comics by 3 months in the mid to late 70s. And in fact, when they got into the 80s for a time, they were even post dated further ahead. But so if one accepts that was Marvel's practice at the time, X-Men 94 had an August 1975 cover date. So that would put publication of that particular issue 3 months earlier, or in May of 1975. All right. So, but again, preceding that was Giant Size X-Men #1. That hit the stands first. And that one had a cover date of May 1975. So, using the logic, that would mean that Giant Size X-Men #1 hit the newsstands in February, right? Wrong. And here's why. Because if you go through the same practice, if you actually peruse the advertisements and the bullpen bulletins page in that issue, and then you compare that alongside other Marvels from around the same time, you would see that the contents of the non-story pages actually align with Marvel comics published not in, or cover dated, I mean to say, not comics cover dated May, but it actually tracked with comics cover dated in June, not May. So the contents of Giant Size X-Men #1, the advertisements, the bulletins page, actually mirrored other Marvel comics published in June, not May. So Marvel, essentially, with that cover date, made a mistake. Marvel's never done that before. So to kind of further the argument, if you look on the first page of Giant Size X-Men #1, below the splash page, in the indicia at the bottom of the page, it actually says that the comic is dated 1975. No month is provided. And most comics in that space will have the issue number and the month and the year. Giant Size X-Men #1 did not have a month. It just had the year, 1975. So that just kind of shows that Marvel probably really didn't know what issue to, or what month to put on that issue. So there likely was a lot of back and forth behind the scenes on scheduling the issue, and it may have floated one way or the other in that time. But at the end of the day, the issue actually mirrored content from the other comics that were that contained a cover date of June, which would put the publication of said comics, including Giant Size X-Men #1, in March of that year. Okay, March 1975. It's a safe bet to say that's when Giant Size X-Men #1 was published. All right. So now getting back to Foom magazine. All right. Foom #10, the X-Men issue, that magazine had a cover date of June. So you could all be thinking right now, well, JJ, so what? So it's got a cover date of June. The same cover date you just said should have been on the cover of Giant Size X-Men #1. So Foom #10 doesn't predate anything. Came out the same month, right? Well, not necessarily. And here's why. So if we have an understanding of cover dating practice for comic books that hit the newsstand, all right, we have to look at a publication that's a little different, like a fan club magazine like Foom, and why cover dating practices were likely different, all right? So Foom, you have to understand, was a fan club magazine that was mailed out to members of the fan club every 3 months directly to their homes. It was not published on a newsstand. It never saw newsstands. It was mailed out directly from the printer to fans at home. So there wasn't the competition on the newsstands. Publishers trying to one up each other by post-dating their publications to try to seem fresher and newer to potential readers. Foom didn't have that. No magazine that's subscription only has to worry about that. So the argument that Marvel post-dated a magazine like Foom the same way they would post-date their comics that hit the newsstand isn't just necessarily the case. And to try to illustrate that, we can look forward to a different issue of Foom magazine, one that has kind of a topical cultural reference that kind of carbon dates it at a certain point. And the issue I'm going to use, for example, is Foom #15. All right. So Foom #15 was cover dated September of the following year, 1976, which would align with its quarterly publication schedule. All right. So September 1976 was the cover date of Foom #15, which featured Howard the Duck. All right. And the reason that issue featured Howard the Duck was because Howard the Duck at that point was the topic of a kind of satirical presidential campaign, a Howard for President campaign that was launched by Marvel and Howard the Duck writer Steve Gerber. And it was kind of a that whole pseudo campaign was kind of a farcical, I guess, counter culture protest, you could say, about the actual presidential candidates from that election and a lot of the perceived inadequacies that many felt the contenders had. So Marvel and Gerber said, well, let's have Howard run for president and kind of show people there's an alternative, even though Howard the Duck obviously was never a legit candidate for president. All right, but that issue shows Howard in full Uncle Sam regalia, as befitting of a parody of a presidential campaign, with Howard doing his, Richard Nixon impersonation on the cover, and that issue, cover dated September, kind of aligns with a publication around that time, because anyone who's endured presidential campaigns, we all have, right? You find September is kind of the height of presidential campaign season. You see countless, endless ads on television, and you go down the road, you go down your own street, and there's presidential campaign signs everywhere. So it isn't illogical to assume that September actually could have been the month that FOOM number 15 was published. If one wants to try to imply that FOOM was post dated 3 months, like Marvel's newsstand comics, well, that would put FOOM number 15 not with a September publication date, but it would put it back into June. Which just seems a little early for a publisher to, tie into a relevant social political topic that far in advance. I mean, the presidential debates haven't even occurred yet, and the primary election hasn't occurred yet. So it just doesn't seem to track that an issue like FOOM number 15 with a election day motif would have come out in the summertime. And then if it had, then there would have been a subsequent issue in time for the election that could have featured Howard, but it didn't. So FOOM, at least that issue, likely was not post dated, at least by 3 months. Okay, it might be safe to assume that maybe it was post dated by maybe 1 month, for instance. Maybe it actually was mailed out in August to fans. I mean, there's no way to really be sure, but it's a safe bet that it was not post dated 3 months. All right. So if we roll this back to FOOM number 10, the preceding year, featuring the all new, all different, uncanny new X-Men, the June 1975 dated FOOM number 10 maybe could have come out in May. All right. But that is still 2 months after the release of Giant Size X-Men number 1 in March. So, no, kids, FOOM number 10 did not predate Giant Size X-Men number 1. It was not the first appearance of the new X-Men. And your investment is safe. Your Giant Size X-Men number 1 is the legit first appearance of the team. And that issue that you sold your soul to purchase, or might be lucky enough to already have, it's safe. Hold on to it. One reason I believe there's a misconception on that issue of FOOM actually being a first appearance of the team is because that was incorrect notion perpetuated by the Comics Guarantee Corporation, CGC. When fans came to realize that, hey, this issue of FOOM appears to have come out around the same time as Giant Size X-Men number 1, maybe it's the actual first appearance. So they would dig out their old copies of FOOM number 10, send them off to get slabbed and graded by CGC, and CGC would send these issues back, and there'd be a note right on the label of the slab at the top on the front that would say, this is the first appearance of the new X-Men team. And it just wasn't so. They're wrong. So, I think a lot of people just took CGC at their word for that. But if you kind of roll back to, when all these different issues are actually published, it just doesn't align. So yeah, kids, fans, countrymen, Giant Size X-Men #1 was the first appearance of the modern day X-Men as we know them today. And X-Men 94 was the second. Foom, #10, I guess therefore would stand as the chronologically, if out of continuity, third appearance of the team. Which, hey, that's pretty awesome. I mean, third appearances of key characters carry collectible value. It's kind of a nice little addendum to have in your collection. It's not as common. It's harder to find. A lot of people, just don't realize the inherent value of that magazine. So if you have yours, I'm lucky enough to have mine back here somewhere. Lucky you. If you don't and you want one, you better start scouring conventions and eBay, because on eBay at least that issue's going for several $100s, if not into the thousands. So I'm glad I got mine decades ago. So yeah, kids, that is the answer to the mystery of what the actual first appearance of the all new, all different X-Men are. It's what we thought all along: Giant Size X-Men #1. So, but dig out that Foom #10 and take a look, because it is kind of cool. So that's it for this episode of I Will Tell You, gang. Thanks for tuning in. I will have another episode once I think of something to tell you about. But in the meantime, just thanks for watching. This is JJ Ramblings About Comics and Stuff. We will see ya. Hey, you're still here? After all that? You even stayed to watch the credits? Jeez, oh man, go home. Go to bed. Actually, you are my new best friend. Come on over. We'll have a beer.